Okay, we are Kristof.
Yep, and Martín.
And Martín. We are in
Sarajevo.
Sarajevo. In relation, yes.
In Hotel Holliday,
Yeah.
the Olympic Hotel.
Yeah.
You're speaking in English or Spanish or both?
I think it might be good to use both.
Yeah. We're here for the Dialogical Practices Conference, which starts on the 2nd of April, and today is the 29th of March, Saturday the 29th of March. We just had dinner and came back.
What do you mean, came back?
Came back from the restaurant.
Yeah. And we've been sharing since yesterday,
Yep.
the 28th. We meet
At the airport.
at the airport by chance.
Yep.
Both arrived in the same airplane from Frankfurt the same day
Yep.
before the conference, and without knowing each other from each other.
And we waited for the bus,
Yeah.
which either didn't come or was late. And we said no to the taxi drivers, and then we took a cab with a man who was clearly not a taxi driver.
Yeah.
But we're still alive.
Yeah. It was an adventure. One of the adventures we have had these 2 days. We've had these days.
Yes.
Yeah. And I propose you today to have a conversation with a recording. We have some subjects around, but it's without agenda. It's open. We have a time for this moment of the encounter, 1 hour or less, maybe 15 minutes, more or less. Yeah. So my purpose around the recordings that you asked me, Kristof, is about sharing dialogues maybe in a natural way, without agenda, but as the ones we used to have and to share, people who practice dialogical thinking and way of living or way of being, trying to get that kind of experience. We used to have dialogues with people and to learn about them and to grow with them together. But as you said during the dinner, sometimes they just get evaporated in the air, and it's like if nothing happened. But we learn about it, we share our experiences, and we grow and transform ourselves. So maybe it's a reason to have some records about that, and being open to share that experience and to be found also the kind of practice. The kind of practice
to be found?
To be found, difundir,
to
share.
To define?
Difundir, spread.
Oh yeah, okay.
In two sense, maybe because we want to share our work and to invite other people to our dialogue, but maybe because of another sense that is maybe in the first level for me, in my inner feelings, that is to show something that I think it found and to share how it found and to invite other people to do it with their communities, their people, and
to do it or to respond to it, or
that's very well.
what do we talk about? Well, I was just thinking today we talked about quite a few different things, but the last thing we talked about was the challenge of connecting in social situations, knowing how to do that, or how to engage with people that maybe you don't know, or you aren't used to. And as we were walking home, I thought we talk about dialogue as being genuinely present and engaging in the situation. That kind of happens in the context of a network meeting, say, which is different to sitting next to someone at a dinner or meeting somebody that you haven't met before or you haven't talked to for a long time. And how do you connect and have dialogue in that less controlled kind of situation? It's like, does that make sense?
Yes, of course. There are like many possible paths to continue or to answer. I would like to don't say anything, and just continue hearing, because I don't have a particular thing to say, but there are some resonances. I wonder why the conferences are so different to our life.
The conferences, or just even when we're practicing dialogue versus our life?
Okay.
Yeah, both actually. In some ways I find the conferences sorry, do you want to finish your thought? And then
I can continue afterwards, as you prefer. I can wait.
Well, I was just thinking, for me, the conferences have been different because they bring together people with some sort of a shared interest, or interest is maybe the right word, and part of that interest is how to be with each other, or be with another person, how to listen, how to be open to different possibilities. So in some ways, for me, these conferences have been different because they've been very enriching compared to day-to-day life, where you don't know what the other person, how ready they are to engage in a more dialogical way. But I was also thinking, when you're in a professional role, facilitating a meeting with dialogical principles, it seems easier to be in dialogue because you're yourself, but you're also yourself in a role, in a defined role, as a facilitator or a participant. But when you're sitting next to somebody at a dinner, you don't have the comfort of being in the role of a practitioner, and so it's different to talk to somebody that you don't know about whatever might be important, and that might be, it might be the weather, it might be, like, I guess maybe, I think, I don't know if there's a dialogical way of doing small talk. You know small talk?
Mm-hmm.
And small talk, I think, is part of the way that we connect to other people. And so, yeah, it's almost like small talk is where you practice a way of relating around a topic that is not is neutral.
Yeah. Yeah, something came to my mind a couple of seconds before, because I think there might be a difference between small talk and dialogical practices. That it might be there are some issues around roles, facilitation, but there is some other issue, I think, because sometimes dialogical practices could be horizontal, between peer supporter, or just peers, like in this moment we are in a conversation, but there is an important issue around the turnos de habla, like timing of talking, like now is your moment.
Turn-taking?
Yeah, like in linguistic, in the theory of actos de habla, talk action, actos de habla, from, creo que se llama John Searle. You talk about turnos de habla. Now it's your turn, now it's my turn, then it's her turn or his moment.
Yeah.
So when we are in a dialogue, each one of us has a moment of talking, and it's consensual. It might be consensual. That is important to continue until we complete the idea. We have completed the idea, the feeling of okay. Now it's okay to stop, and I don't know if it is exactly like that, but maybe in the everyday life conversations we talk once overhead the other, like more like this. It depends the culture too, isn't it? I don't know if.
I think that since I kind of thought about dialogue, I'm much less, I think, much less inclined to interrupt or to speak over people. Doesn't mean I don't do it, but maybe I'm not much less. I think I'm more aware when I do it. So I think it's probably changed maybe how I say things and how I interact in social situations. But maybe the difference is in a social situation, you don't know that there's an accepted sort of rules around what to talk about or how to talk. Unless you're with someone else who knows the rules.
Yes. in relation to that, I wonder if the rules of dialogue are like settled rules from a kind of technique or a kind of scenario with rules, imposed rules, or if they are rules. For many people, what I would say is too different in a way, and it's very like incorrect theoretically and culturally.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean more natural in a way, like getting us into something in relation to something deepest, and yeah, in relation to our feelings and some order around our experiences.
I think you're saying. I think what I've heard is that there are some accepted ways of talking, rules, principles maybe, and they help us to get to something deep or something something about our something necessary or core about our experience. I think as I was listening to you, I was thinking about how sometimes when you're in a network meeting, the topic can stay very superficial sometimes, maybe. Actually, I was thinking maybe the word rules is maybe not the right word. Maybe principles is the right word.
When you mean principles, do you refer to the 7 principles of open dialogue or something
Not
else?
necessarily.
Okay.
Rather than rules for how to talk, which is you must do this.
Yeah.
I guess the idea for me of a principle is it's less prescriptive. But I think maybe whether they're principles or rules, they are practices that come out of a way of thinking about communication. So,
which principles? Would you mind to say some of them, or which?
Not interrupting, or being...
I interrupt you for something.
And
Not a more Argentinian way.
Well, that's interesting. This is why I think principles, because a rule would say never interrupt, but a principle said be careful if you interrupt. Not trying to use people's words rather than rephrase them and give them back to them. Using tentative language, I wonder, or that type of thing.
Using tentative, repeating the words of the person. I know because I saw many times videos about that kind of experience in therapeutic context. So I would like, if it's possible, to repeat, to share that kind of intervention. Also, is it possible to differentiate that kind of intervention from interpretation of psychoanalysis, for example?
Well, I think I'm not a psychoanalyst. I think what I wanted to say first, the reasons I think they're principles is because they're not rules, but there's an idea behind each principle. So I think the ideas are that that dialogue is about each party being able to speak freely, and as soon as I give you a word to explain to you what you mean, it's a form of monologue, I think. But if I repeat your words, then you have this chance to say more. And similarly, I guess the idea of not interrupting people. It's not that you must never interrupt people, but it's respecting each voice, not cutting each voice off. But in practice, we interrupt people, or if someone talks for 1 hour without interruption, there's always a balance. Then other voices can't be heard. So I think the principles help with the basic ideas of appreciative listening, of letting each voice be heard, of not of one voice not coercing another voice. But I think you can still do it by interrupting. I can still say, I think you mean this, and you can still say, I don't think, you can still disagree with me. I don't know that I have the thought very clearly articulated, but I think as a, depends on your role. I think as a doctor, often people listen to what I say as being absolute or truthful, and so even if I'm being tentative sometimes, people might say this is what the problem. They'll take it as dogma rather than an utterance. So I have to be careful about, or be mindful about what I say and how I say it. And actually, also sometimes when you do reflections and you repeat people's words, I think often there can be a very profound experience that someone else has heard what they had to say, that they used their words, that their words were good enough to explain something or to communicate something. Have you tried that? So what was the question was around repetition and interpretation. Is that like psychoanalysis? I'm not a psychoanalyst. I think I would interpret with caution, because an interpretation is still a hypothesis. But depending on who delivers an interpretation, it can be seen as more than a hypothesis. And it can be seen as all-encompassing. So this interpretation...
What do you mean, all?
All-encompassing. So if I give an interpretation...
What is encompassing in Spanish? Do you know?
Que include todo.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explica todo. instead of just explaining, even if it's a true interpretation, it can only explain a part, I would think.
It brings me some idea in relation to two aspects. One is the previous idea that I mentioned in relation to principles of dialogue and nature. What does it mean? It's difficult to argue, to have arguments around that. But talking to you, you bring me again to a book that I read in the past, and it was very. It was an influence to me. It's an Oriental book in relation to war and to techniques of war, El Arte de la Guerra, Arts of War, from Sun Tzu. And it is like if the rules of the principles of dialogue are in relation with the principles of that book compose or think in relation to war, because are principles of the energy. In relation, in that book is in relation with Taoism, in relation with what you were saying right now, a couple of seconds before. If you interpret in your words more or less, if you are making an interpretation, you are like saying that some reality is like the other reality in a one-to-one translation, without, but we are not opening to other kind of possibilities. We are not allowing this is possible, but this is possible, but this is possible, but this is possible, and maybe each one of these are possible together with the others. Okay. That is more relativist in a way, but more polyphonic also, and it made me think that Sun Tzu in that book says that, for example, before a war, before a battle, you need to have in consideration like thousands of aspects, and with aspects he meant like a kind of dimensions of the situation. You need to think that situation in infinite kind of dimensions. You need to spend a lot of time with polyphony, with different officers and ranks, and with arms, with bodies, but also with scales of the scenario. This is something. Some points of the book that impressed me, made me think about the dimension of what he's talking about.
I think it just also made me. I'm going off a bit. But we were talking a bit about leadership as well, and
about yes.
And the Sun Tzu idea makes me think like a leader doesn't have to. A leader can be stronger. A leader can, if a leader is aware of the experience aware of and respectful of the experience of different people at different levels of the organization, then you must make decisions differently to if you just think about, if you ignore parts of the organization. Like if I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you need to have a connection with the people who clean the office as much as you need to have a connection with the managers. Or if you don't have
at the same time, the process in which the leader goes to that level of observations, to the level of decisions, is not enough clear in general. because the observation of the multiple aspects of point of view regarding the anticipation of an action, for example, the conference or a meeting the 9th April or different possibilities. The anticipation of the multiple aspects regarding that fact is different than that fact. That is something that psychologists of sport that is in a class told us. Everything can happen. You don't know what would happen. You are preparing yourself for the moment, but everything can happen. And regarding decisions, sometimes the same thing happens in the process of making decisions. And I have an idea regarding the process of making decisions. That is to say that sometimes when we are uncomfortable, we need to hold our uncomfortability and not making a decision because we need to make a decision, or not being hurry about it. We need to hold the experience of being there and hold the uncomfortability and hold different voices and hold on. And at some point the action will result of this process, will appear by itself. Because it's not a decision that you make in your mind as something arbitrary. It's something that emerges from the process itself and from the inner from the inner energies and the inner forces that are around the process. So we need to think what is leadership and who are the leaders and why are we talking about leadership? What is in play at the moment?
Well, I'm thinking about I think about leadership in a couple of ways. I think about being a leader in an organization, and actually, I think where possible, you sit with discomfort and you wait. You don't sit in a passive way though. I think you engage with discomfort. Maybe is the right word, and possibilities can arise, but sometimes you have to make decisions with a time limit, and sometimes you have to make decisions because resources have dried up. But maybe if you've been able to practice sitting with discomfort or keeping people in mind, then when you have to make those harder decisions because they have to happen tomorrow or today, or because you have no resources, you benefit from the other decision-making process. You benefit from having, you benefit from all of the times when you did have the chance to engage with discomfort over a longer period of time. I don't know if that's making sense.
I think I get lost a bit in the last part. I understood that if you are a leader in an organization, you sit with discomfort and you need to hold that discomfort. That is something that I think I also was saying. But you mean we don't always have enough time to do the whole process.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to have some decisions to make some decisions because we have a time. Yeah. And it brings me another discussion that we had before.
Yeah.
that is to say that some of our participations in the world, as people of the network, some of us participations in the world are in institutions that are not dialogical in the shape by itself, so they have some timing, some bureaucracy, some way of being that we need to be on dialogue also with that. So not always we have the ideal environment for being on dialogue, in life. But well, that is true, and I think we might think and talk about how can we adapt to this world and to discuss that kind of world. And I think your working group could be about it, because we are talking about how to be on dialogue in situations of not being on dialogue, or how to be on dialogue with people that is not interested in being on dialogue.
I'm hoping that people will give me a solution. I'm hoping people will tell me the solution. But
yeah, what do you say? What did you say?
I'm hoping people will tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've had a lot of thoughts that are very connected.
Yeah.
So the point I wanted to make about a leader in having to make quick decisions, or having to make quick decisions, is that how they make the quick decision benefits from all of the other times when they didn't have to make a quick decision.
Can you think about an example of a quick decision, for example?
So something goes wrong, and the person above the manager needs to have an explanation for why this happened, or a report that's due tomorrow. Or probably due today. So you can't, I don't know if that's a good example, but I'll go with it anyway. You can't sit with that whole thing and you haven't got the chance to listen to everybody's story, but you might be able to, or the way you deal with problems in the past means that you might be able to be less, to be more tentative maybe in what you say, or you make sure that you include certain people. I don't think that's not a good example actually. What do you think of it?
It's a very good example. I don't know if this example explains the whole situation, the whole problematic, but it's it gives me a good idea. Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, or say if you have to write, I don't know. Yeah, I'll think of one. Or maybe I think another example. Someone comes to hospital. You have to make a decision about whether to keep them in hospital or not because of risk, and you can say these are the risks that justify keeping someone in hospital against their will. You can do that, and maybe you would do that anyway. But you can do that in a way that is very intellectual and you make sure you cover all the legal reasons for doing it, or you can do it in a way that still engages with the person who's presented to hospital. You can share your doubts. You can talk about what it feels like, or you can ask people what it feels like to have this experience. And it might not be pleasant, but you can listen to it, even though it's easier to go to another room and write a certificate and not talk to the person.
How would the conversation could be? How would the conversation be?
I think there have been times when I've had to say, the best. I have to make a decision. It's part of my role, and at this point in time, my best thinking is that I have to keep you in hospital against your will.
Would you say why?
Yeah.
Do you imagine an example?
It's usually around, I think, because the reason you came into hospital was so serious that I'm not comfortable to say you can just go home at the moment, but we'll review this every day. But that could be a reason why, or that's usually some version of that. Or sometimes it's, I think it sounds like you're making decisions that affect you, but from where I stand, it feels like you're not able to think through things as clearly as maybe you normally would. And yeah, I think I'm much better. I think I work more at saying this is my perspective rather than this is the truth.
It brings me a lot of feelings, that example around an hospital and internalization, or how could we say hospitalization?
It's probably basically to detain somebody in hospital.
Detain? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if to detain something in hospital could be safe for this person or the family, but at the same time, there are some ideas about hospitalization and so many traumatic experiences around it, and beyond that ideas, so many polemics around diagnosis and another field of diagnosis and classical psychiatry, a lot of things.
Yeah. I think I think one of the things we have to be aware of is that there are no risk-free options. So coming into hospital sometimes, it's not like hospital is perfect. So you're always having to balance risk. But I think it's the same as, not the same. When you leave the house in the morning to go to work or to go somewhere, there are risks that you have to face. You could get run over. You could have a car accident. but there are also risks with never leaving the house. I don't know if that's a fair example, but
how is the hospital? How is being inside the hospital for the inpatients?
I think it probably depends. I think, well, I probably can't speak for them. I think for some people, it feels a bit more containing and a bit more containing. I think for some people, it probably also feels a bit scary. I suspect there's a range of experiences. I think the other thing that...
Scary in which way?
I think sometimes people can be scared of staff, but I think sometimes people can feel scared because of the other people that are in the other people in the ward, because everybody is I guess people come into hospital for various reasons. So
they share rooms. You told me?
No, they don't share rooms. But where I work, they don't share rooms. Mostly they don't share rooms. But I guess if you have someone who's very agitated, it might not be pleasant if you're not agitated.
I imagine that that feelings of being scared during the night, for example. My watch is in my phone, so be attentive of your phone, and when let's be careful of
You
time.
probably should wind up soon.
In 10 minutes, 15, yeah? Okay. I was thinking, and if we have 10 minutes, or you know the hour, what time is it?
It's 10:30 now.
10:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's close for me. Okay. If you agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was a good experience. It is a good experience. I'm glad. Thank you for your trust and the confidence of opening your world, your experience, your expertise as a professional, as a person. Regarding this aspect in relation with hospitalization, I wonder about the people being scared. I imagine in the night, for example, during the night. I imagine people afraid of the world, afraid of other people, afraid of themselves, afraid of because they are in a situation they didn't suppose they would be in that situation. They will become an impatient, without freedom, without getting what they want to get, work, family, responsibility, without all those aspects. And facing, if they are lucky and they have good company, facing their phantoms and the demons, and the reasons why they are there, why they became they are there. Yeah.
Look, I think I'm a bit reluctant to generalize, because I think every person's experience is different. think, like everything, we can always do better. I guess maybe. I guess maybe. I don't know. You can talk about whether someone should or shouldn't come into hospital, and in some ways, that's a helpful discussion. But it won't stop people from coming into hospital. Or if it does, it won't stop it very quickly. Like it will be, that's a long process. But you can also talk about when people are in hospital, how can we be respectful of their experience or mindful of their experience? And that's also, like, you can't tell staff you have to be like this, because every staff member is also an individual. But I think you can still make it an important thing for staff to understand that they have a role in shaping, or in how the patient experiences the hospital. And maybe staff are more likely to be open to this if they see that they are recognised as an individual rather than just another staff member. I think I'm making this up a little bit.
Making?
I'm not how.
Yeah.
I'm thinking on the spot.
You're thinking.
But,
okay. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. Of course, this is like a kind of example or scenario for think what you meant before about leadership that might observe the cleaning personnel, cleaning staff, but also other kind of persons, hierarchies, different hierarchies, and to know the organization in different levels. And I think it's true that you can observe and see the other, and you have a register of who the other is as a person, and not only as a people who clean the house or the toilets or whatever, or the nurse or the staff. I think it's very difficult to do it, but because it requires to be aware of you, to be aware of where you are, to be aware of your life, and this is a process. Yeah. All of this is a kind of process in which we might be inside, you know. Yeah. And it's a process that is enrooted with our life, But of is what we see in some of the people who develop the dialogical practices or the open dialogue. How do they see you? How do they see others? How do they talk? How do they express themselves? How are they aware of the scenario? How they are attentive to different levels of people and different hierarchies. Everybody is taking in account. So, if you are seeing the other as in that way, the other feel that he is seen by the other, so he is also learning a way of seeing others, and this is also the way you are seeing your client or the patient, and this is a process that is healthy by itself in a way.
Yeah. I think think there's value in learning about dialogue, but there's also value in trying to live dialogically, if that's the right word. That so that the people that you interact with, even if they don't know the theory, they can still resonate with your effort to see them as a person, and that they can still. I don't really know what I'm saying, but I think maybe we're starting to talk a bit about how a dialogical approach can shape culture, and not everybody that's part of the culture or contributes to the culture necessarily has theoretical knowledge, but they have experiential knowledge. And actually, to me, a lot of the challenge and opportunity around training is that you can read the textbook, but you need to understand it experientially for it to resonate. You need to be able to connect whatever you read with experience to see that it's, for me to come to the conclusion that it's meaningful.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it makes sense. Yeah, it really is really clear. It's really clear. I think it's clear. I would leave it like that for the moment to end to an ending for this conversation.
Yeah.
I feel it was interesting, and it is a feeling that is more a kind of beginning of a conversation, of a multiple kind of possible conversations, because there are many windows that are opening on subjects that could be explained and develop. So we can end the conversation today, and if you feel like it tomorrow, at some point we can continue with a second part and a second moment, and to see how this decanta, how. Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.